Help me welcome Nick Prefontaine. He has overcome incredible trauma and challenges in his life, and I think you're going to love to hear his story. It gives great inspiration and certainly tons of hope for all of us out there. I think you'll be inspired. Welcome, Nick.
So excited to be here, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
We would love to hear your story. You have really been through some amazing things in your life, and I would love to hear from you how it all played out and how it affected you.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, it all goes back to a fateful day, when I was actually at ski club with my friends in eighth grade. So we had all got released, my friends and I, for ski club a little bit early, which as a 14-year-old was a big deal. We get to miss a little bit of school at the end of the day. That was always really cool. We all had brought our snowboard gear onto the bus to get ready so as not to miss a precious moment once we got to the mountain. And we got to the mountain when the rest of the class went inside to get ready and waste time. We were ready to go. We headed right for the chairlift. And Stephanie, on the ride up of the chairlift, we noticed that it was very icy because it had been raining earlier in the day. So people were wiping out everywhere. And the chairlift actually went right over the terrain park where all of the jumps were. I knew as soon as I saw it that I had to go off the biggest jump in the terrain park. There wasn't even a doubt in my mind. So got to the top, buckled into my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards that jump with all my speed. And going up to the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, and that's the last thing that I remember.
Mm,
So they wanted to bring a helicopter
mm,
to the mountain to rush me to the hospital, and they couldn't because it was too windy. So they had to send in an ambulance, and there was only one paramedic who could intubate right on the spot, and
mm,
I needed that to be able to breathe. And out of all the paramedics in the county, he was one of the paramedics that showed up to the
mm,
mountain that day.
mm.
And this is always, when I'm retelling it, it's always easy for me to remember just because there were three things that I really credit to being able to be here today with you and your listeners and tell this story. That's the first one. The second one being, although I didn't have a helmet on, the pair of goggles that I wore on my over my eyes or on my head
Mhm.
were very thick with a lot of padding. So I never would have fathomed that I would need them to brace my fall, but I learned after the fact from doctors, experts, eyewitnesses that were there that not only did my goggles brace my initial impact, as I continued to roll down the mountain and continued to hit my head, they told me that with each blow, the goggles moved with my head to cushion each blow. So between my head and the ice. The third thing, once I did make it to the hospital, I was out. I was partially induced into a coma because they had to wait for the swelling to come down in my brain.
Mhm.
Because they didn't want me to wake up and panic and who are you? What am I doing here? So then the swelling would increase and I would have died. So
Mhm.
that's why they had to partially induce me. And I was out.
Mhm.
I was in a coma in my room, and the only people that were allowed in to see me at that time were my parents. And the doctors, at least early on, they came into my room and they figured, oh, he's in a coma, so we'll just talk to his parents.
Mhm.
They came in to share the not so good news, not so good news, not so good news. As you can imagine, if you were anyone you know have has ever been in an acute situation or a traumatic injury, they can't paint a rosy picture for liability reasons. So when the doctors started to share that to my parents in front of me in my room, my mom stopped them. She
Mhm.
said, no, no, not in front of him, because she understood that even though I was in a coma, I was still taking in information.
Right.
So she made the doctors step outside my room. And then once they were there, that's when they shared with them that I probably wasn't going to be able to walk or eat on my own ever again.
Wow. Mm.
And even if I was able to come out of the coma, there was a good chance that I would need 24-hour care for the rest of my life. So, to my parents' credit, they didn't accept this like a death sentence.
Mhm.
They, like so many patients do. So they took the information, thanked the doctors, and then this just allowed me to treat it like any other situation. So I didn't know any of this.
Right.
All this noise didn't get through to me, whether subconsciously or unconsciously, it didn't get through my mind. So I just treat it like any other situation. So I ended up being in the coma for 3 weeks. I really don't remember a month because it was a partially induced coma.
Mhm.
And after a month, I was transported to a rehab hospital in Boston. And that's where I began my journey of having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. And Stephanie, was right at this point that I started to unknowingly use a system to not only make a full recovery, but run out of the hospital. And that's what I teach to this day in my one on one work with clients and also in keynotes that I give to
Mhm.
brain injury associations and other organizations that support individuals that are going through trauma. So that's the STEP system. STEP is an acronym, and what I can do is give a 10,000-foot view of it. And then at the end, if anyone's interested in learning more, I can let them know how they can download the whole system for free. So STEP stands for support. Make sure you have the support of your family and friends right from the beginning. And this is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. Is trust.
Mhm.
Trust that once you take your first step, your next step's always going to be available to you. And this also starts with trusting that voice that we all have within ourselves,
Mhm.
leading us and telling us what we should do. So the way that I can illustrate this is, it was right around the time that I was transported. I hadn't been at the rehab hospital long in Boston, and I could overhear my parents talking with my team of doctors and therapists, and they were saying, "Okay, what do we need to do to make sure Nick makes a full recovery?" I heard in the back of my head, "You're going to run out of the hospital." So then I was able to communicate that to the rest of the team, and running out of the hospital became our common goal and what we were working towards. So listening to that voice inside of yourself, and I think we're going to have enough time. I'll share how later in my life that led me to the work that I'm doing today. Following that voice inside of yourself. So E is energy. Maintaining your energy allows your body's natural ability to be able to heal itself, and medication has the potential to get in the way of that. The best way I can illustrate this is at the rehab hospital. So my mom and her parents would be with me during the day, and then I would always have my dad or an uncle or a grandfather come in and spend the nights with me. On the Whoever it was, they would always stay in a cot next to my bed. At night when I was sleeping, and this was my grandfather, Bub, I call him. I still call him Bub. He was he was staying with me that night, and I still wasn't cleared to walk yet on my own. So whenever I got up, I would have to have help from anyone, a nurse, or whoever was staying with me, to walk me to the bathroom just because they were afraid I would fall. So I was within a few weeks, like a few weeks or days of being cleared to walk on my own again. However, I still wasn't cleared. So I got up in the middle of the night. I tried to get whoever was staying with me, but I think it was Bob, his attention because I couldn't really project my voice and he couldn't hear me. So I managed to get the hospital bed down and make it to the bathroom and back. Nothing ever happened. However, the hospital found out the next day and they freaked out. And they're like, "Oh no, we can't have this, liability and everything." They said, "We're going to give him this many cc's of this great medication before bed, and that should calm him down so he can sleep throughout the night."
Mhm.
And my mom heard this. She's like, "No, you're not. Just tell them not to do that again." So I think that's important to mention because I was past the point of acute, like having that partially induced coma. So we needed to get the body off the medication to allow the body's natural ability to
Mhm.
be able to heal itself. P finally is persistence. So once you've taken your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. And
Mhm.
by continuing to move forward every day, you are building an unstoppable momentum. So if you fast forward less than 60 days later, I realized my goal of running out of the hospital. And really, Stephanie, it wasn't like my work was done at that point. I had to continue to go to outpatient therapy for another 6 months
Mhm.
for physical, occupational, and speech therapy, same things, along with being tutored all summer long, 5 days a week, in order to continue on to high school with the rest of my classmates.
Wow, that's really incredible. The running out and then to continue back in with high school is just really, there's not a great word to use there, except I keep coming back to incredible because it almost feels unbelievable after what you were told, or what your parents were told. And how beautiful that your mom intervened and you did not have to hear that. Great parent.
Yes, I'm very fortunate. I do have great parents. Yeah,
Mm.
I'm definitely very fortunate, and it's actually kind of a little surreal to me that only 18 months later, after finishing my rehab from recovering from my coma and my snowboarding accident, that um, I'm sure you can relate to this, that when you're younger, time is compressed. So something like 6 months, 12 months, 18 months seems like a lifetime away. However, the older I get, I'm really seeing that it's not really a lot of time. It took a mentor reflecting this back to me a few years ago for me to realize it. She's like, wait a minute. So you only 18 months later, after finishing your rehab from being in a coma and your snowboarding accident, you got your start in real estate, and
Mm,
that was door knocking pre-foreclosure doors when I was 16.
wow.
She's like, that's kind of a big deal. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I never saw it that way because I said time is compressed. So what I would do is go to these homeowners that had missed a few payments or a payment on their loan and see if I could set up meetings for one of our investors to meet with them the following week about buying their home. So I would go door to door to these people, and it took a mentor pointing it out to me that because this was so close to my action, my recovery, that really going door to door, helping people out of their unfortunate situation was a part of my recovery. I did that throughout high school. After high school, I got my real estate license, started helping buyers and sellers. And really, ever since I graduated high school, I've always had this voice, again, coming back to the voice in the back of my head, saying, whether it's I've been in sales, in real estate, marketing, whatever, it's always saying, that voice that is, saying, yeah, great, Nick, but what you really need to be doing is telling your story from stage and helping accident, trauma, crisis survivors like get through their challenge first and then thrive with the rest of their lives. So that voice has always been
Mm.
in the back of my head. So I got my real estate license, was helping buyers and sellers. Then in at the end of 2014, my dad came to me, and I was a full-time realtor at this point, but he came to me and said, hey, I'm getting all these properties non-conventionally. So without signing personally or using any of my money like down payments or big investor down payments, accumulating all these properties, and I need someone's help to put them on the rent to own market, not like listing them as a realtor, putting them on the rent to own market to look for rent to own buyers. He said, could you help me with that? And I finally came around to the idea that I could do this right alongside being a realtor.
Mhm.
And so I started doing that and then helping him with all the marketing and putting all his properties on the market turned into, oh shoot, now I got to hire someone to handle all the buyer calls and everything. So could you also do this? And I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. And then January of 2016, Stephanie, it didn't even make sense for me to keep my real estate license anymore because 90% of my income was coming with him as an investor, uh,
Mhm.
putting these rent-own homes on the market and
Wow.
working with buyers and everything. So I let my real estate license go in January of 2016. Really, in 2016, we started holding events once or twice a year. Because of that, I've always had the opportunity to tell my story from stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought, I'm listening, I'm following that guidance, that
Yeah.
voice in the back of my head. Kind of, not really.
Right.
It took doing this once or twice a year, sharing my story from stage. When someone approached me in 2019 after hearing me talk, and this is probably the longest time that I'd ever spoke before, and it was maybe 15 or 20 minutes. I never forget that. She approached me after hearing me talk and said, I'm not trying to steal you from your dad and your family real estate company. However, if you're ever looking to fine tune your message and bring it to another level so that you're able to have maximum impact and help the most amount of people possible, I can introduce you to a few coaches and mentors that have helped me along the way. I wasn't ready yet because I was actually dealing with a voice challenge,
Oh.
and I developed in 2012 from actually screaming my scripts at the top of my lung. I caused damage to my voice.
Oh. Mm.
And I don't think I have enough time to go into it today, but maybe if you'll have me back, we
Yeah.
can go through that and the lessons and everything it has to
Yeah.
involve in that. But I was in the final throes of that voice issue when this woman heard me talk,
Mm.
and that was in September of 2019. She gave me her card. I wasn't ready yet. I didn't call her, but I hung on to her card. And then once this voice issue had worked its way out of my system, I finally reached out to her, and that was in May of 2021. I said, okay, I'm ready. What should I do? She introduced me to one of her mentors who became my mentor, Trisha Brooke. And from that first conversation that I had with Trisha, I shared my story and what I was looking to do. I asked her, do you think that's possible? She said, absolutely, for sure. What you should do is the speaker salon.
Mhm.
And I was like, what's that? So
Mhm.
she said the speaker salon is you commute to New York City and you get to be on stage with up to 10 other speakers from 10 to 2 every Wednesday at the Triad Theater in New York City. And you get to work on a 10 to 15-minute talk and get my live direction and feedback while you're on stage. So I said yes. She said that's 25,000. I was able to pull that together and do it. And then it was during the speaker salon that Trisha pitched the idea of what it would look like to work with her one-on-one.
Mhm.
She says she specializes in helping speakers build out their speaker platform. I didn't even know what that was. I had no idea what that was. However, now I do.
Mhm.
And I'll go into detail on that. But she said that's 75,000. And I said, Trisha, I don't have that hiding underneath my mattress, but give me a week and I'll figure it out. Because I just knew it was almost in my soul. I knew that I needed to follow this, and I needed more of her one-on-one coaching, more of her time. So I went and applied for financing, got approved, and 6 days later I sent her the money. Trisha was the one who helped me launch Common Goal, my company. And also, when I talk about build out my speaker platform, so prior to Trisha, the longest that I ever spoke before was maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. Now I'm giving 50 and 60-minute plus keynotes to brain injury associations all over the country and other organizations that support individuals that are going through trauma. But if you would have told me that this is what I'd be doing back in 2018 or 2019, I would have told you that you were nuts. And she was actually the one that helped me pull the step system out of me. The step system is always just how I've dealt with things and how I was raised. Any kind of challenge, anything is just always that's how I deal with it. I just unknowingly that's what I do. Trisha asked me, she said, you have this amazing story. You were in a snowboarding accident, and then you were in a coma for 3 weeks, and then you ran out of the hospital less than 90 days later. How'd you do it?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. I just got up every day and kept working, did the best I can. And
Yeah.
she's like, no, not good enough. So she kept going and kept asking me to the point where I was like, I don't know. Stop asking me that question. I'm so happy though, Stephanie, that I went through that process because, like I said, she helped pull the step system out of me. And now I'm able to help other people
Hmm.
uh, that are going through any kind of life crisis, challenge, trauma, get through their challenge, life crisis, health crisis, challenge anything, get through to the other side, and then thrive with the rest of their lives because of the step system. So now I know what it is because it's exactly what I'm doing, being here today and
Yeah.
being able to tell my story. You're giving me the opportunity to do that.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. It's so powerful. And I know you were referring to like this voice inside of you, but it would have to say it seems like God was really just opening the right doors for you and leading you to that next step with each of these things as you would obediently go into the first part, when you started working with the person, and then there's more in depth. And then that person literally pulls out of you what has become something for you to be your own company now, right? That's incredible to think how your trauma was used in such a powerful way, even now build your future. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. It's very often that I share it this way that people, and especially if you're in the middle of it, if you're in the crisis, the challenge, all you can see is what's right in front of you. And the reason that a lot of people get overwhelmed is because they think 8, 9, 10, 12, 20 steps ahead. You don't have to do that. What you have to do is focus on what's in front of you, what you can do today. That's all that you have to do right now. If you get too far ahead of yourself, you very easily get overwhelmed.
Mhm. Exactly. That makes me think of a couple of famous quotes. Elizabeth Elliot, who just says basically do the next thing. Like you don't have to have all the things ahead of that, right? Just do the next thing. And I believe it's Martin Luther King Jr. who has a quote too about you don't see the whole staircase. You just see one step at a time. And I'm sure they resonated with you before, but it makes me think of your story.
Absolutely, yeah. 100%. If I would have thought all that's ahead of me when I was in a wheelchair in the rehab hospital, I very easily would have got overwhelmed, but I didn't. I just every day, I just what's in front of me,
Yeah.
what's right in front of me.
And for you to have run out of that hospital is miraculous. I mean,
Thank you.
yes, that story is so inspirational. And I just can't wait for our listeners to hear your story. And hopefully, whether they've been through trauma as significant as what you've been through, everyone has little t trauma, maybe, or whatever they're going through, they can still apply what you're saying because your process that you went through, as you described, it works. It sounds to me like it would work for just about any type of situation or challenge.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Still, a few things about that. Me sharing my experience and my story, um, in no way diminishes your trauma and what's a big deal for you and what you're going through. I'm just sharing mine because I was able to pull some lessons from that, and by doing that, the step system, able to help others. And I think people get ahead of themselves. They try to think too far ahead.
Very true.
You just have to deal with what's in front of you. Take that first step because once you take that first step, your next step's always going to be available to you.
Hmm. And then it becomes the one step.
Mhm.
Here's this one step, and then we really only can take one step at a time anyway. That's how we're designed, you know?
That's right.
Well, this has been just such a pleasure to hear your story, and I definitely want to make sure that our listeners are able to reach out to you. So we will be sure to put your website in the show notes. But before we wrap up, is there one more thing that you would like to share with our listeners?
I think for sake of time, I don't think it'd be a good idea to get into the whole voice challenge thing. If you have me back, I can go into that and go into the details. But like my accent and like looking back on it and pulling lessons from that,
Yes.
it's just to me, it's just something that happened in my childhood and I dealt with it and I moved on
Mhm.
kind of thing. But then when something else, some other adversity happened, like my voice challenge,
Right.
and I used the same process to get through
Mhm.
that, at the end of that, I was like, all right, I have something here. I have something that I need to be sharing with the world and helping people because, yeah, I did it with my snowboarding accent, and that was over a course of 3 months and then patient rehab like 9 months. But my voice issue was something that I first developed in 2012. I received my last Botox injection February 13th of 2020.
Oh,
So eight years I dealt with it.
yeah.
I might have recency bias, but I'm more proud of having overcome that than I am my snowboarding accident because of how long it took. Yeah, the step system, I have something here, and I'm so glad that I worked with Trish and she helped pull it out of me because now I can help other people and share it with other people.
Absolutely. And what we go through, I love it that you're turning that into sharing and helping other people because that's really what it's all about. And it's so true about the voice. I think that is a great idea to have a part two to this. So let's look forward. We can kind of get that on the works for in the upcoming months. But I do believe your voice, our voice, is so important. And I believe that is something that our listeners also would benefit from hearing because we all have to, no matter if it's from a physical and actual, as you've had, challenge with it, or just not knowing how to use your voice in a way effectively in communication is so important that we use our voice in a way that's most beneficial. So that would be a great part two. And again, you can reach out to Nick in the show notes below. We will have his website.
Stephanie, just real quick before we
Yes.
wrap, I
Yes.
have I mean I shared a lot of different things, but I know I only like pretty much glossed over it. But if there's anything interesting to anyone about my real estate aspect of my story, how we buy and sell homes
Yes.
creatively and without using any of our credit or money, if you want to learn more about that, you're curious, you can go to smartrealestatecoach.com
Okay.
/masters class. And there you'll be able to get registered for a free master's class that's going to teach you all about how we buy and sell on terms, is what we like to call it. And
Okay.
then by the end, if you're interested in taking your next step, you'll be able to. Then, believe it or not, the step system, what we covered is only a 10,000 foot view of the step system. However, if you go to nickprefontaine.com /step, you'll be able to download the entire step system for free today
Oh,
and learn all about support, trust, energy, and persistence.
wonderful. Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Thanks again. It's been a pleasure to have this chat, and I will look forward to part two.
Me too.